All right, I think we are started. I know we are 1 minute early, we'll wait for it to be exactly 7 o'clock, Madhura, and we can get started. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, perfect.
Madhura, let's get started at 7. Awesome.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the session today, which is jointly presented by ILA and Kelpachar. This is the seventh session in our series on the POSH law. Myself, Madhura, I represent Indian Lawyers Association. We are the largest organization of lawyers in India with the presence in about 100 cities of the country. We run several initiatives and events, activities in order to provide education, mentoring, and a networking platform to lawyers across pan India. If you're a lawyer and if you wish to contribute or participate in any of our initiatives, we would love to have you on board. Watch out for an email from our side tomorrow. So now I hand over to Smita, who will moderate our session today. Smita, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhura. Good evening, everybody. I hope it's a very auspicious day today. I think it's Eid, and we'll be seeing the Eid ka chand soon. So, welcome on board. While I think it will be about time when we finish the session, and we should be able to see the chand, right? So, welcome on board on our series of various discussions that we have been doing. Today we are discussing about difficult legal words. Now, from where did this come? I come purely from a non-legal background, and I sit in various committees, right? And alongside me, I used to have many legal people, one or two at least legal people who used to work with me, and they would use some random word which is uh, a legal word for the posh related stuff. And I would look at them and think, oh my God, what are they talking about? I just don't know this, right? So that is when I used to feel, and I used to go research, find out, look around. So I said, isn't it very important? Because in IC across, we do not have all legal folks, right? There are some people who come from absolutely no background. So can we simplify this? So thank you very much for the lovely panel members that I have. Introducing about myself, my name is Smita Shetty Kapoor. I have around 23 years of work experience. I am the co-founder and CEO at Kelpachar. Uh, we have been doing a lot of work in the space of course, prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, diversity and inclusion, and employee assistance program. So that's about me. And here I have our lovely panel members. With me, I have Meenu Padha. I hope, Meenu, I'm taking your name correctly. Uh, uh, Ankita Ray and Ranjita. Okay, a short, I'll try and make an attempt of introducing them, but then I'll ask them to introduce themselves if I've not done justice. Meenu Pada is a lawyer. She's a member of Jammu University Internal Complaints Committee. She's also president at National Child and Women Development Council. She's vice president at Hartal for Harmony. She's a founder of Masti Ki Pathshala. It's a school for underprivileged children. Ankita Ray with me is a partner with Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. She's a corporate commercial labor and employment lawyer. She advises international and domestic clients on business strategy and a variety of issues on day to day functioning of business in India with a special focus on employment matters. Also, I have with us lovely Ranjita here. She's a company secretary and has more than 2 years of work experience in handling various secretarial matters. She's a commerce graduate at the Ethiraj College for Women and an associate member of Institute of Company Secretaries of India. Her expertise lies in the field of law advisory matters, SEBI and FEMA regulations. Okay, so I open this space to each one of you. I hope I've done justice to your introduction. Please stop me and please, if you want to add anything, please go ahead and do that. or we could continue with our discussion. Looks like I've done justice. Thank you so much. So first I invite Meenu here. Meenu, hi. Would you want to just say hello? And the list of legal words that Meenu is going to speak to us about are these.
Let me know, first of all, am I audible?
Yes, now you are.
And visible?
Absolutely visible.
Okay, perfect. So shall I start?
Yes, please, Meenu.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much, ma'am, for this. आपने इतना अच्छा मेरा introduction किया. That is very, मेरे लिए बहुत वो है. That is very beautiful. आपने कुछ ज़्यादा ही बोल दिया actually. मैं ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. But हाँ, being a member of Jammu University Internal Complaint Committee, I am aware about this act. As an advocate, हम क्योंकि हमारा इंक्वायरी होती है एंड जम्मू यूनिवर्सिटी में कुछ भी ऐसा ट्रायल आता है सेक्सुअल हैरासमेंट का, तो वी डील अकॉर्डिंगली. तो यस, बीइंग एन एडवोकेट वी आर अवेयर ऑब्वियसली. जैसे ये टॉपिक है आज का कि सिंप्लीफाई करना लीगल लैंग्वेज को, ये बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट भी है एक्चुअली, क्योंकि लॉ में ज्यादातर लोग कंफ्यूज कहाँ होते हैं, जहाँ पर लीगल टर्म्स यूज होती हैं एंड पीपल आर नॉट अवेयर अबाउट दैट द मीनिंग ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर टर्म्स. लाइक बहुत सारे ऐसे वर्ड्स होते हैं, पॉश में इनफैक्ट बहुत सारे ऐसे वर्ड्स होते हैं, हर एक कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर में कहीं भी. लाइक यू पीपल मस्ट नो कि कोई भी एक ऐसी प्रेमिसेस जहाँ पे 10 और मोर देन 10 एम्प्लॉय है, इट इज मैंडेटरी देयर कि वहां पर एक जो इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी है दैट मस्ट बी देयर. अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये होता तो नहीं है, इम्प्लीमेंट तो नहीं हुआ है हर जगह, बिकॉज आई एम फ्रॉम JNK, सो आई एम अवेयर अबाउट इट. यहाँ पे तो नहीं हुआ है इम्प्लीमेंट, अगर मैं बात करूँ. बट हाँ, ऑफ कोर्स होना चाहिए, क्योंकि 10 एम्प्लॉय जहां पर है तो इट इज मैंडेटरी अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस पर्टिकुलर एक्ट. आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि मैं कह रही हूँ कि ये होना चाहिए. इट इज मेंशन इन द एक्ट कि जहां पे 10 और मोर देन 10 एम्प्लॉय है, सो इट इज अ ड्यूटी ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर एम्प्लॉयर, उस एरिया का जो भी वो प्रेमिसेस है, इट मे बी स्कूल, इट मे बी यूनिवर्सिटी, इट मे बी कॉलेज, इट मे बी एनीथिंग. सो वहां पे जो है एक छोटी सी एक शॉप से लेके बड़ी सी मल्टीनेशनल कंपनी तक जहां पे 10 एम्प्लॉय है, इट इज नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट कि वहां पे फीमेल ही एम्प्लॉय हो तभी होगा, इवन मेल एम्प्लॉय भी वहां पर है, तो इट इज अ ड्यूटी ऑफ दैट एम्प्लॉयर कि वहां पे जो है एक इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी जो है वो बनाई जाए. सो कुछ वर्ड्स जो हैं जो मुझे बताए गए हैं कि उनको अगर मैं लीगल लैंग्वेज से थोड़ा सिंप्लीफाई करूं तो फर्स्ट वर्ड इज दैट सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस. Of course, the circumstantial evidence, as the word suggests, circumstance. क्या होता है कि जब भी कोई क्राइम होता है, अगर मैं थोड़ा एग्जांपल के तौर पे समझाऊंगी तो दैट विल बी मोर easy for me to convey what the meaning of this particular word. So circumstantial evidence, like कि अगर क्राइम की बात करें तो कभी कभी डायरेक्ट एविडेंस नहीं होता है कि मतलब किसने क्राइम किया है, कहाँ पर क्राइम हुआ है. Am I audible?
Yes, now you are.
Okay, fine. So circumstantial evidence जो है उसमें क्या होता है कि क्राइम में मोस्टली क्या होता है कि डायरेक्ट एविडेंस नहीं मिलते हैं, तो ऐसे केसेस में जो है सर्कमस्टांसेस को देख के जो है वो पता लगाया जाता है कि क्राइम जो है किसने किया है. फॉर एग्जांपल फिंगरप्रिंट्स एक एग्जांपल है, फुटप्रिंट्स एग्जांपल है. हालांकि सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस जो है एक एक्ट है, इंडियन एविडेंस एक्ट जो है उसके अंडर ये डिफाइन किया गया है, लेकिन सर्कमस्टांशियल इंडियन एविडेंस एक्ट जो है वो पॉश एक्ट में जो है वो कवर नहीं होता है. लेकिन हालांकि पॉश एक्ट एक ऐसा एक्ट है जहाँ पे कोई भी कंप्लेनेंट जब कभी कंप्लेंट लेके जाती है, ऑब्वियसली उसके पास कोई ठोस सबूत, जो कहते हैं कि हमारे पास भी कोई कंप्लेंट लेके जब आता है तो उसके पास कोई भी महिला होगी तो उसके पास उसने कोई ठोस सबूत नहीं लिए होते, क्योंकि उसको नहीं पता होता है कि उसके साथ एक्चुअली हो क्या रहा है. पहले तो ज्यादातर क्या होता है कि महिलाएं ये चीज से डरती हैं कि कंप्लेंट करें या नहीं करें. उनको एक गिल्ट रहता है हमेशा कि अगर हम कंप्लेंट करेंगे भी तो मे बी शायद ये सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हो या नहीं हो, ये नॉर्मल बिहेवियर हो. कुछ को ये डाउट रहता है, कईयों को ये रहता है कि अगर हम करेंगे ऐसा कंप्लेंट तो मे बी वो हमारे अगेंस्ट कुछ कुछ वो हो. ऑब्वियसली सोसाइटी जो है जजमेंटल है, तो सोसाइटी जो है वो तो महिला को ही सबसे पहले दोष देगी. तो ये चीजें रहती हैं बहुत सारी करेज के बाद जब फीमेल एक कंप्लेंट लेके जाती है तो ऑब्वियसली उसके पास जरूरी नहीं है कि हर बार, हाँ अगर वो अवेयर है, वो अलर्ट है, तो डेफिनेटली वो जो है उसके साथ कुछ एविडेंसेस जो है एज अ कुछ रिकॉर्डिंग जो है, आजकल मोबाइल हर किसी के पास है, स्मार्टफोन यूज करते हैं हर कोई, तो वो ऑब्वियसली रिकॉर्डिंग कोई ऐसी रखेगी या फिर कुछ ऐसे फोटोग्राफ्स या फिर कुछ भी ऐसा उसकी सपोर्ट में, जो उसकी कंप्लेंट के सपोर्ट में उसको हेल्पफुल रहे। लेकिन जहां पर उसके साथ ऐसा नहीं है तो वहां पर क्या है, अब ड्यूटी इंक्वायरी कमेटी की बन जाती है, क्योंकि मैं भी एक इंक्वायरी कमेटी की मेंबर हूँ। तो ऐसे केसेस में क्या होता है कि हमें भी जो है वो सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस पे रिलाई करना पड़ता है। अब क्योंकि पॉश एक ऐसा एक्ट है जहां पर जरूरी नहीं है कि महिला जो है, देखिए इसमें से प्राइमा फेशियाई जो होता है द फर्स्ट इंस्टेंस, ये प्रूव होना चाहिए कि हाँ महिला कंप्लेन लेके आ रही है और ये जो कंप्लेन है ये सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट की है। इसमें जरूरी नहीं है कि बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट ये प्रूफ होना चाहिए कि हाँ इसके साथ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हुआ है या नहीं हुआ है, सिर्फ इतना कि हाँ वो बोल रही है कि उसके साथ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हुआ है एंड प्राइमा फेशियाई वो लग रहा है, प्राइमा फेशियाई इज एट द फर्स्ट इंस्टेंस वो लग रहा है कि हाँ उसके साथ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हुआ है, तो वो कंप्लेन जो है वो एक्सेप्टेबल होती है। अब इंक्वायरी कमेटी के पास जब कंप्लेन आती है, नेक्स्ट जो वो होता है स्टेप होता है वो होता है कि अब जो है पॉश एक्ट जो है नेचुरल जस्टिस के प्रिंसिपल है कानून में, प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस, इसके बेसिस पे चलता है। जैसे मैंने क्राइम की पहले एग्जांपल दी, तो क्राइम में क्या होता है कि बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट जो है प्रूफ होना चाहिए कि क्या इस इंसान ने कुछ क्राइम किया है, मे बी मर्डर किया है, कोई भी क्राइम, थेफ्ट किया है, कुछ भी किया है, तो वो बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट प्रूफ होना चाहिए। लेकिन पॉश में ऐसा नहीं है। पॉश में हमारे कानून में दो तरह के प्रिंसिपल जो है वो मेंशन किए गए हैं। मैं थोड़ा इसको कोशिश करूंगी कि जितना ज्यादा इजी रख सकूं, सो दैट जितने भी लिसनर हैं हमारे वो लॉ की लैंग्वेज को थोड़ा मैं कोशिश करूंगी जितना मेरे से हो सके तो मैं इजी रख पाऊं उसको। तो देखिए दो प्रिंसिपल्स हैं लॉ। पहली जो है प्रिंसिपल है दैट इज बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट एंड सेकेंड जो है वो है बैलेंस ऑफ प्रोबेबिलिटीज। बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट जो है वो हमारे क्रिमिनल केसेस में चलता है, एक्यूज ने क्राइम किया है या नहीं किया है। अब ये प्रूफ होना जो है वो एक डाउट के उसके बियॉन्ड होना चाहिए कि हाँ उसने क्राइम किया है, इसी ने मर्डर किया है। लेकिन जब हम बात करते हैं पॉश में कि क्या इस इंसान ने सेक्सुअल हैरासमेंट का ऑफेंस जो है वो किया है या नहीं किया है, उसमें हमें ये प्रूफ करने ये पता करने की जरूरत नहीं है कि हर एक डाउट उसके बियॉन्ड होना चाहिए। बस बैलेंस ऑफ प्रोबेबिलिटी मस्ट बी देयर, like there is no need to establish the change of sexual harassment beyond reasonable doubt as in the criminal proceeding, as I already told you people कि criminal proceedings में beyond reasonable doubt होना चाहिए, but इस केस में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। all that is necessary is the inquiry must be conducted in the fair and transparent manner and in due compliance of the principle of natural justice। जैसे मैंने बात की natural justice की, तो दिस इज नॉट आई एम सेइंग, ये एक केस है मेधा कोतवाल करके एक केस है, इसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट 2012 का केस है, इसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ही यही लाइंस जो मैं बोल रही हूँ, सेम लाइंस जो है सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इस केस में कोट की है। आप देख सकते हैं ये मेधा कोतवाल करके ये केस है, ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कंसीडर किया है कि ऑल दैट इज नेसेसरी इज द इंक्वायरी मस्ट बी कंडक्टेड इन अ फेयर and transparent manner and in due compliance of the principle of natural justice after giving full opportunity to the defendant। now this defendant in अगर पॉश एक्ट में बात करें तो डिफेंडेंट जो होगा दैट इज द ऑपोजिट पार्टी। अब हम उसको तब तक एक्यूज नहीं मान सकते। इसमें ऑडी आल्ट्रम पार्टम का एक एक प्रिंसिपल है, यानी कि हियर द बोथ साइड्स। अब मैं बोल रही हूँ कि मेरे साथ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हुआ है, वो इंसान ऑब्वियसली बोलेगा कि नहीं उसके साथ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट नहीं हुआ या मैंने ऐसे कुछ नहीं किया। तो पॉश एक्ट में इंक्वायरी कमेटी की ये ड्यूटी बन जाती है कि वो दोनों पार्टीज को सुने, वो सिर्फ उस कंप्लेनेंट की कंप्लेन के बेसिस पे डिसीजन नहीं ले सकती हैं। इट इज द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस कि दोनों पार्टीज को सुन के ही इंक्वायरी कमेटी जो है वो आगे प्रोसीड करेगी। प्रोसीड इन द सेंस, अब सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस पे हम वापस आए तो सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस जो है दैट इज कि उन विटनेसेस को बुलाएगी। आईसी के पास जो इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी होती है उनके पास बहुत सारी पावर्स होती हैं, एक्चुअली समनिंग की पावर्स होती है उनके पास, अगर वो चाहे तो वार्निंग इशू कर सकते हैं, अगर मैलिशियस कंप्लेन है, बहुत सारा क्या होता है कि आजकल महिलाएं कई मिसयूज भी करती हैं लॉज को, तो ऐसे केसेस में क्या होता है कि अगर उन्हें लग रहा है, इंटरनल कंप्लेन कमेटी को लग रहा है कि नहीं ये जो कंप्लेन आई है दैट इज ये फॉल्स एलिगेशन लगा रही है महिला किसी को, मतलब किसी भी रीजन से, और ये मैलिशियस कंप्लेन है, तो ऐसे केसेस में जो इंटरनल कंप्लेन कमेटी है वो उसमें महिला के खिलाफ भी इनफैक्ट जो है वो एक्शन ले सकती है। सो जस्ट लाइक अ सिविल कोर्ट की पावर जो है इंटरनल कंप्लेन कमेटी को मिलती है, तो मैं कहूंगी कि हर एक इंटरनल कंप्लेन कमेटी जो है उसके पास बहुत सारी पावर्स होती है, तो उस पावर्स का इस्तेमाल करके जो है उनको विटनेस को समन करने की पावर होती है। अब सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस पे बेस है ऑफ कोर्स, तो कोई डायरेक्ट एविडेंस तो है नहीं है कि महिला के साथ ऐसा हुआ है या नहीं हुआ है, तो उसमें वो देखते हैं कि विटनेसेस का क्या कहना है, उस एरिया में जो कलीग है उस महिला के, उनका क्या व्यू है इस पे, उनका क्या इस पे कहना है कि क्या उसके साथ कभी ऐसा, अगर उसे कोई उसका बॉस है, कोई एम्प्लॉयर है, उसे टच करता था तो कभी उन्होंने किसी ने देखा या कुछ ऐसा सुना, मे उनको वो जो वीडियो रिकॉर्डिंग होती है वो जो है वो मंगवा सकते हैं। ऑफ कोर्स कोई रिकॉर्डिंग वगैरह अवेलेबल हो, सीसीटीवी की फुटेज जो है वो उनको कॉल करने का राइट होता है। तो सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस की बात करें तो यस, इसमें जो है पॉश एक्ट में सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस तो है ही है, लेकिन बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट का जो है प्रिंसिपल है वो पॉश में अप्लाई नहीं होता है। यहाँ पे ये नहीं है कि आपको रीजनेबल डाउट के बियॉन्ड जाना पड़ेगा कि हाँ क्या इसने सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट किया है, तो एक सिंगल डाउट भी नहीं होना चाहिए। यहाँ पे बैलेंस ऑफ प्रोबेबिलिटीज के बेसिस पे कि हाँ मे भी हो सकता है, तो उस केसेस में वो जो इंक्वायरी कमेटी है वो प्रोसीड कर सकती है फर्दर। तो नेक्स्ट वर्ड दैट इज आई थिंक सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस। आई हैव ट्राइड माय बेस्ट कि समझ कन्वे कर सकूं मैं व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस। प्लीज लेट मी नो अगर कुछ थोड़ा सा थोड़ा आगे पीछे हो गया या फिर कुछ प्रॉब्लम है समझ।
मैं बस आपका ध्यान इसमें लेके आना चाह रही हूँ कि हमने अभी सर्कमस्टेंशियल एविडेंसेस के बारे में बात किया है और आपने बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट जो लिस्ट में था उसके बारे में बात किया है। वी हैव द नेक्स्ट वर्ड दैट जो आपके पास है वो रिट पिटिशन के ऊपर है। ओके, थोड़ा बहुत क्लैरिटी आप उस पे दे सकते हैं, आपके हिसाब से व्हाट इज अ रिट पिटिशन?
ओके, देखिए रिट्स जो है ऐसे तो बहुत सारी रिट्स होती हैं, बट अगर मैं बात करूं 5 तरह की रिट्स हैं जो हम फाइल कर सकते हैं हाई कोर्ट में अंडर आर्टिकल 226 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया एंड अंडर आर्टिकल 32 जो है हम डायरेक्टली सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जो है वो जा सकते हैं। अब ये रिट जो है, रिट हम मतलब इसमें जो है क्यों रिट फाइल करेंगे, क्या नौबत आ जाएगी अगर मैं पॉश को इससे ज्वाइन करूं, तो पॉश को रिट से जोड़ने की कोशिश करूं। देखिए जैसे मैंने बात की कि हर एक कंपनी, चाहे वो छोटी हर एक प्रेमिसेस, चाहे वो छोटी सी छोटी दुकान ही क्यों ना हो या फिर बड़ी से बड़ी कंपनीज क्यों ना हो, लाइक बड़े बड़े शहरों में लाइक दिल्ली मेट्रोपॉलिटन सिटीज जो हैं वहां पे कंपनीज होती हैं, तो दे मस्ट भी, वहां पर तो इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी होना चाहिए, दैट इज मैंडेटरी। अब जहां पे नहीं होगी तो वहां पे उस इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी पे क्या क्या एक्शन हो सकता है, दैट हैज बीन मेंशन। अब बहुत सारे ऐसे केस लॉज हैं इनमें जहां पर इंटरनल कंप्लेंट नहीं कमेटी नहीं थी और वहां के एम्प्लॉय ने जो है वहां पे उनकी उस पर्टिकुलर कंपनी के खिलाफ या पर्टिकुलर जो भी वो प्रेमिसेस थी उसके खिलाफ जो है वो रिट में गए बिफोर हाई कोर्ट, बिफोर दैट पर्टिकुलर हाई कोर्ट्स, या फिर इवन अभी जेएंडके का मैं बात करूं तो रिसेंट ही, आई एम नॉट एबल टू रिकॉल द एग्जैक्ट द टाइटल ऑफ द केस, बट उसमें क्या हुआ था कि एक पायलट हैं, वो स्क्वाड्रन लीडर थी, तो उन्होंने क्या किया कि एक सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट का कंप्लेंट किया अपने ही किसी कलीग पे, तो उनकी इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी थी, लेकिन जो हर एक हर एक एसोसिएशन, हर एक कंपनी, हर एक वर्क प्लेस का एक ना अपना स्पेसिफिक रूल्स का वो होता है, स्पेसिफिक एक रूल एंड रेगुलेशंस होते हैं, सर्विसेज रूल होते हैं जिनके अकॉर्डिंग उन्हें पॉश को इम्प्लीमेंट कराना पड़ता है अपने पर्टिकुलर वर्क प्लेस में। अब वहां पे उसने क्या किया कि वहां पे वो जो सर्विसेज रूल थे उसके अकॉर्डिंग वो लोग आगे प्रोसीड नहीं कर रहे थे। उनकी इंक्वायरी कमेटी तो वो थी, लाइक इंडियन एयरफोर्स की बात कर रही हूँ मैं, तो यहाँ पे इंक्वायरी कमेटी तो उस पर्टिकुलर वर्क प्लेस में थी, लेकिन वो जो सर्विसेज रूल्स है जो इंडियन एयरफोर्स के, उनके अकॉर्डिंग वर्क नहीं कर रही थी। तो वो जो महिला है, वो जो पायलट है, वो डायरेक्टली जेएंडके हाई कोर्ट में उन्होंने रिट फाइल की अगेंस्ट दैट पर्टिकुलर इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी ऑफ दैट उनके जो भी एरिया में जो उनकी वर्क प्लेस की इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी थी, कि ये जो एयरफोर्स, इंडियन एयरफोर्स के रूल्स हैं जो पॉश एक्ट के अंडर हैं, ये उनके अकॉर्डिंग जो है मेरी कंप्लेन को आगे इंक्वायरी नहीं कर रहे हैं प्रॉपर, या फिर कुछ कहीं वायलेशन कर रहे हैं, तो ऐसे केस में जो है हाई कोर्ट ने ये रिट जो है ये अलाउड की, और उनको जो है उस पर्टिकुलर इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी को, वो जो इंडियन एयरफोर्स की दैट वर्क प्लेस इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी थी, उनको ये हिदायत दी, उनको ये कहा कि आप जो है जो भी इंडियन एयरफोर्स के जो भी रेगुलेशंस हैं, जो भी सर्विसेज रूल्स है, आप उनके अकॉर्डिंगली पर्टिकुलर वर्क करें। हालांकि इसमें कोई पेनल्टी इम्पोज नहीं की गई, लेकिन अगर आप बात करेंगे सेक्शन 26 में, इसके अगर पॉश एक्ट की कोई नॉन कंप्लायंस करता है तो इस केस में पेनल्टी का भी प्रोविजन है। इवन कि ये एक ऐसा पहला एक्ट होगा जिसमें किसी भी कंपनी का लाइसेंस कैंसिल हो सकता है। यहाँ तक का मतलब एक इवन की करोड़ों तक कंपनी को पेनल्टी पड़ जाती है, और उनको कंपनसेशन पे करनी पड़ती है उस पर्टिकुलर एम्प्लॉय को। तो आप देख सकते हैं कि इसमें कितना फाइन का कितना स्ट्रॉन्ग प्रोविजन है, कि अगर कोई भी कंपनी जो है अगर प्रॉपर रूल फॉलो नहीं करती है अंडर पॉश एक्ट, तो इवन उनपे जो है करोड़ों का, इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द कंपनी कि उसका स्टेटस क्या है, कंपनी का उसका मतलब क्या है, वो एम्प्लॉय का स्टेटस क्या है, उसको देख के जो है वो इनको पेनल्टी इम्पोज कर सकता है। तो ऑफ कोर्स अगर रिट पिटीशन की मैंने बात की, तो ऑफ कोर्स मैंडामस में जो है, मैंडामस एक रिट हाई कोर्ट में फाइल की जाती है डू योर ड्यूटी करके। आर्टिकल 226 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया में 5 तरह की रिट्स हैं। वन इज द मैंडामस। मैंडामस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रिट एक्चुअली। इट इज यानी एक ऐसी रिट है जिसमें आप हाई कोर्ट से डायरेक्शन दिलाते हो गवर्नमेंट को कि आप अपना काम करें, और इसमें डू योर ड्यूटी करके जो है ये मैंडामस रिट है जो आप फाइल कर सकते हैं हाई कोर्ट में। अगर कोई भी वर्क प्लेस जो है, कोई भी जहाँ पे 10 एम्प्लॉय हैं, वहां पे 10 एम्प्लॉय है या 10 से ज्यादा है, वहां पे अगर कोई भी इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती है, तो बीइंग एन एम्प्लॉय ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर वर्क प्लेस, you can file a writ of mandamus under article 226 of the constitution of India, और आप उसमें रिट में जा सकते हैं, ये रिट पिटीशन आप फाइल कर सकते हैं और कोर्ट से डायरेक्शन दिला सकते हैं, और वो जो कंपनी है उसको फोर्स पेनल्टी इम्पोज हो सकती है, और उनका इनफैक्ट लाइसेंस भी कैंसिल हो सकता है। दैट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द कोर्ट की वो क्या इसमें वर्डिक्ट पास करेंगे। लेकिन हाँ, आप इसमें जो है आर्टिकल 226 में ये ऑफ कोर्स फाइल कर सकते हैं।
थैंक यू सो मच। दूसरा जो है वो कन्विक्टेड, एक्चुअली बहुत ही कॉमन वर्ड है, but it's again very largely used that the person is convicted. So do you think पॉश में ये वर्ड यूज हो सकता है that अगर ये प्रूव हो जाता है, so is that person convicted?
देखिए, कन्विक्टेड पॉश में जो है, अगर मैं बात करूं एक कंपनी को कन्विक्ट करने की, तो वो मैं बता चुकी हूँ। रिट में आप कन्विक्ट कंपनी को इस तरह से करा सकते हैं कि आप आर्टिकल 226 में जो है मैंडामस की रिट फाइल कर सकते हैं हाई कोर्ट में, और उनको ऑफ कोर्स पेनल्टी इम्पोज की जा सकती है। अगर मैं पर्टिकुलर पर्सन की, जो हम एक्यूज की बात करूं, तो ऑफ कोर्स उनके लिए पेनल्टी जो है वो उनको भी उसमें पॉश में दी गई है। सबसे पहले तो अगर एक लेवल होता है, इंक्वायरी कमेटी क्या क्या डिसीजन ले सकती है, वो डिसाइड किया जाता है कि इंक्वायरी में क्या क्या निकला, क्या क्या, मतलब इट डिपेंड्स अकॉर्डिंग टू केस टू केस, कि किस तरह के फैक्ट्स हैं, किस तरह के सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस की हमने बात की, तो सर्कमस्टांशियल एविडेंस के बेसिस पे क्या लग रहा है कि सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हुआ है। अगर हुआ है तो उससे विक्टिम को, अग्रीव्ड विमेन जो है, उसके मेंटल वेलनेस को कितना फर्क पड़ा है, उसको फिजिकली उसको कोई इससे नुकसान हुआ है, उसको फाइनेंशियली नुकसान हुआ है, मे बी उसको कंपनी से निकाल दिया हो बॉस ने, या ऐसा कुछ कर दे, तो इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द कंपनी, इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द इंटरनल कंप्लेंट कमेटी ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर वर्क प्लेस, कि वो क्या डिसीजन देते हैं। ऑफ कोर्स वो वार्निंग इशू कर सकते हैं, वो उस एम्प्लॉयर के खिलाफ उसे पेनल्टी इम्पोज कर सकते हैं।
So ये जो वर्ड है, मुझे इसका ये है, so convicted is penalty or convicted is that you are found guilty? What is convicted?
देखिए, कन्विक्शन इज यू आर फाउंड गिल्टी, एंड जब आप गिल्टी फाउंड करेंगे तभी आप उसको फाइन इम्पोज करेंगे। अगर फॉर एग्जांपल मैं कह रही हूँ कि किसी ने फॉर एग्जांपल सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट का केस है, मैं लेके जाती हूँ कंप्लेंट और किसी तीसरे बंदे के खिलाफ लेके जाती हूँ, और वो इंसान जो है वो जब तक उसका गिल्ट प्रूव ही नहीं होगा, वो कन्विक्ट ही नहीं होगा, तो उस पर पेनल्टी इम्पोज कैसे करेंगे? आई मीन वो अगर उस पे उसका गिल्ट प्रूफ नहीं होता है तो ऑब्वियसली वो उसे एक्विट कर दिया जाएगा, यानी कि बरी कर दिया जाएगा, जो हम कानून की लैंग्वेज में बोलते हैं।
Convicted and acquitted. So these are opposite words, right? So
राइट
adjudication. What does that mean?
ओके, एडजुडिकेशन की अगर हम बात करें तो एडजुडिकेशन इज लाइक कि पॉश एक्ट में किस तरह से इंक्वायरी ट्रायल्स चलते हैं, एडजुडिकेट किस तरह से होते हैं। तो थोड़ा सा मैं इसको अगर थोड़ा सा थोड़ा सा लंबा कर दूं, लाइक 2-3 मिनट का डिस्कशन, थोड़ा पीछे से जाऊं तो वो थोड़ा समझ आने में इजी रहेगा। तो अगर एक कंप्लेनेंट जो है, इज दैट ओके?
एक्चुअली थोड़ा हम लेट चल रहे हैं, इसीलिए अगर आप क्विकली बता सकते तो बेटर, बिकॉज
ओके फाइन फाइन, ठीक है, कोई इशू नहीं है। तो एडजुडिकेशन क्या होता है कि एडजुडिकेशन इज लाइक,
just hold that thought. What we'll do is हम दूसरे पैनल मेंबर्स के पास जाते हैं, उनकी ये करके when we find time we can come back, so you have enough time to
sure, no problem, no
just
problem.
hold that thought, and we are going to Ankita. Thank you very much, Ankita, for coming in. I know that you're not so well, but thank you very much. Can you just come?
Sure.
All right, there you are. I can see you.
Yeah.
So, the word that is there for you, or words that are there for you, is principle of natural justice, appellate, preponderance of probability, and interim measures.
Sure. Smita, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys today. Hello, good evening, everybody. At the outset, my apologies, you'll hear me coughing a little bit. So to begin with the principle of natural justice, I think Meenu already addressed it to an extent. So whenever the IC conducts any inquiry, it has to be in line with the principles of natural justice. Now the question arises that what are these principles? So there's no specific definition, or there is no straitjacket formula to understand this term. But there are certain key aspects that need to be kept in mind. So through the evolution of case laws, etc., the following points that I will mention form a part of the principles of natural justice. One, a fair opportunity to be heard to all the parties, the right to all the parties to cross-examine each other, the right to depose or make a submission or make a statement without any fear or retaliation, and of course, no bias. There should not be any bias against either of the parties. So this fact about the bias has been judicially taken care of, or rather legislatively been taken care of by including an external member, right? Which lends the IC a sort of independence from both the parties. So I think this aspect is best understood through some case laws. Smita, I'm still audible and visible, right? The screen just went off.
Yes, very much visible, very much audible.
Okay, great. So let's take up some interesting case laws. The first one of which is the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel Institute case in 2016. To give you a short idea of the facts, some students complained against certain professors on grounds of sexual harassment. The IC of the institute conducted its proceedings. While conducting the proceedings, there are a few anomalies which I'll discuss when I talk about what the court held. Finally, a order was passed finding the respondents, that is the professors, guilty and recommending their termination from service. The professors, that is the respondents, appealed against this order. In hearing their appeal, the court said that the principles of natural justice have not been followed, have not been followed because of certain reasons. One is that they were not given a copy of the complaint or any of the evidence is given by the witnesses. Secondly, they were not given sufficient time to prepare their response. And thirdly, all the statements that they made were just heard orally. There was no written record made of it, right? On this basis, what the court said is that this order is of the IC is not valid, and therefore it asked the institute that please reconduct this inquiry, but this time following the principles of natural justice. So if you are on the if you're on the IC, any of you, some of the key things coming out of this case law is that make sure that the respondents are also given a chance to be heard. All the evidences, all the statements made by the complainants are given to them. They are given time to prepare their response, and whatever the respondents have to say are also reduced in writing and recorded, right? The other case that I will deal with is Manjeet Singh versus Indraprastha Gas Limited. This is quite essential from the perspective of cross-examination. So here the petitioner is actually the accused. So an order finding him guilty was passed by the IC, and he contested that order. What the court said and what is essential for our purposes is in relation to cross-examination. What the IC had done in this case is they made the complainant and the respondent sit opposite each other, okay, and asked them to discuss the allegation and the case. To which the court said that the right to cross-examine is very integral to the principle of natural justice. It cannot be reduced to a farce. You cannot have two people sitting opposite each other hurling allegations at each other. The objective of the IC and the duty of the IC is to ensure that proper decorum is followed when cross-examination is happening and a proper process is followed. And again, everything that is said in such cross-examination also has to be recorded in some way. So that's the basic principle coming out of this case law.
Awesome. Got it.
Yeah.
So the next one is about appellate, Ankita. What do you know appellate here?
So appellate basically means your right to contest any order or any recommendation that has been given against you, right? So in the case of POSH complaints, any party in two circumstances: one, if he or she is aggrieved by the recommendations of the IC, or if the company, the employer company, has not really implemented the recommendations of the IC, can appeal against both these subject matter, right? Now, what about the process of this appeal, right? If you have service rules, then this appeal will be dealt off as provided in your service rules. If the company does not have service rules, then it may be instituted. The appeal may be, let's say, lodged to the appellate authority under the Standing Orders Act. Now, the Standing Orders Act, under it, the appropriate government are the state governments. So basically, your appellate authority will be different in each state. Now, why this is interesting is, excuse me, as recent as in March this year, what had happened is someone filed an appeal against an ICC recommendation to the Industrial Tribunal in Maharashtra, right? However, the Industrial Tribunal said that, you know what, we have not been designated as the appellate authority for POSH. So then this person approached the Bombay High Court. So the Bombay High Court hauled up the Maharashtra government saying, what is being done about this appeal process? Why have you not designated any court as the appellate court for POSH matter? Post which now the Maharashtra government has issued a notification designating the industrial tribunals as the appellate authority under the POSH Act.
That's good, because there's a lot of confusion, other than Maharashtra.
Absolutely.
Other than Maharashtra, none other states are at all clear, and that to Maharashtra came pretty recent. So that's the
That's right. So we are expecting with this example, all the other states will also hopefully start moving and designate an appellate authority.
Yeah, that would be really nice because there's a lot of confusion from appellate perspective that can an IC's decision taken to LC, can it
Right.
go to a high court, does it have to go to triple? So there's a lot of confusion. I hope with this decision there'll be more
Yeah.
clarity.
Yeah. So I think only Maharashtra and Delhi also a few years back had designated the industrial tribunal as the appellate authority.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Preponderance of probability, while Meenu spoke about it, the balance of probability, but preponderance of probability is a very scary term, and that used to come be used, while maybe we would have used it otherwise, but that word itself is very, very heavy. So can you
Sure, sure. So like Smita, you and I were discussing, I think us lawyers love using these big terms. So it's a pleasure for me to today hopefully simplify it for everybody. So preponderance of probability is basically a concept in determining the standard of proof that is required in an IC inquiry. Like what kind of proof will be sufficient? Like Meenu said, there are two two systems that is there, right? One is preponderance of possibility and the other theory is beyond a reasonable doubt. So let me tackle the second one first. Beyond reasonable doubt means you have to give evidence about an accused, and the evidence should be such that a reasonable man will have no doubt in his head that yes, this person is guilty, right? This standard is used in criminal cases. When we come to civil cases, and particularly in posh cases, the theory of preponderance of possibility basically means you will take all the facts at hand, you will take all the evidences, you will weigh these and see what is a probable situation, right? If there are various probable situations or conclusions, you will see which is the one that is the most probable. So basically, this standard will be met if the proposition or the conclusion that is being arrived at is more likely to be true than untrue, right? So again, there is this interesting case law of X versus Union of India, also known as the Anita Suresh judgment that happened in 2020. It's a Delhi High Court case. Excuse me. So a female employee working in a ESI hospital filed a posh complaint against an accused, accusing him of multiple instances of sexual harassment. Now, during the course of the inquiry, she could not recall some of the exact instances or some of the exact language that the accused had used. She was also not able to provide any witnesses who could corroborate that yes, this had actually happened. So then what the IC did, the IC saw the fact, and it, for one or two instances, it said that yes, we can say that this has happened. But for the other instances where she could not remember the exact language and could not procure witnesses, they gave the benefit of doubt to the respondent. And in order to ensure, proper pardon me, to ensure that work goes on as usual and there is no mutual heartburn, what the IC did is it recommended transfer orders for both the complainant and the respondent. Now, the complainant was not very happy with this transfer order. So she appealed. It went to a single judge bench of the Delhi High Court. Now, this court held that it is impossible for a victim to not remember the exact circumstances and what was said to her and not even give any witnesses. So it dismissed the complainant's petition as well as imposed exemplary costs on her. She appealed again, and it went to a division bench of the High Court. Now, what this court held and what is very important for us to remember when we are talking about the standard of proof, is that it said that when a victim has undergone such a traumatic event, it is possible that she won't recall all the details of all the instances. Further, the court went on to say that most of these cases happen within closed doors. It happens in situations when the accused is very sure that he is safe, right? Therefore, we can't say that for each instance there will be a witness. So, on this basis, what the court went on to say is that you need to balance the probabilities, right? So the proof that you use for any other domestic inquiry will be used for posh complaints as well. And this court actually ruled in the complainant's favor. I hope that
Yes, that
clears out this term.
yes, that is very important, because there is a whole lot of confusion. One more thing that happens is sometimes the IC is pretty divided. Half set of people are saying X and half set of people are saying Y. So how does this then would play out is a very interesting fact to observe for all of us, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So your next word, Meenu, is interim measures. I think that is another very important and key aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, so interim measure, I mean, if we take it in simple English as well, it is to give certain relief to the complainant during the pendency of the proceedings, right? Now, here I will talk more about the role of the IC, because when the IC receives a request for some interim relief, which can be in the form of a request for a transfer for the respondent, request for leave, request that the respondent does not oversee the work or does appraisal for the complainant, etc. The IC needs to then sit and think that, okay, should I allow this or not? And there are certain aspects that the IC needs to keep in mind when taking this decision. One is the personal safety of the complainant. That is she safe or not, or will she be safe if we say a no to her request, right? Secondly, also, if to see if the complaint is of a continuing nature, like is it something that has happened and it stopped, or is it continuing, right? And the third, of course, is also the behavior and any history of the respondent. Not that you will act upon it or assume that therefore the respondent is at fault at this time also based on his background and history, but that is also a determining factor. That said, you also have to take into account that whether the respondent will undergo any hardship that is not commensurate, with the complaint in general. But we have to always remember that the primary outlook for interim relief is towards the welfare of the complainant. So that should always be kept in mind by the IC. And it's definitely a very, very difficult job for the IC to do.
Absolutely. It is a very difficult job.
Yeah. So I'll just talk about two cases here, both of which relate to transfer, because that's the request that comes forward most of the time. One is Saikotan versus Kerala State Electricity Board. It was a Kerala High Court judgment of 2020, where the petitioner, a transfer order was issued against him. But he said that the company is motivated. I had made some complaints against the company and the way it was doing its business, and therefore this order has been passed to victimize me. Now, when this went to court, the company submitted that they had undertaken and given this transfer order pursuant to a posh complaint being filed against him. To which the court actually upheld the transfer order and said that the right to transfer is a statutory right that is being given to the company. Therefore, a transfer order issued pursuant to a request for the same is a valid exercise of powers by the IC as well as the company. Right? The other case is Dinesh Mishra versus Trilochan Mahapatra, Delhi High Court 2019 judgment. Here also it is again to do with transfer, but one of the contentions that the petitioner had put forth is that the complainant has not requested for my transfer. Of course, later on, the company could show that yes, the complainant had actually requested for a transfer, but the court said a very important thing, which is that you do not necessarily need to wait for the complainant to request for a transfer. Typically, transfer, the fact that you can transfer an employee, forms a part of the service conditions between an employer and employee. And if it is being done by the employer pursuant to that, that is absolutely fine. So this is one more reason when you're drawing up employment contracts, sorry, or when you're drawing up employment policies, do ensure that it says that the company has the right to transfer the services of the employees.
That's a very important point, Ankita. One more, it's not a case, or I think the discussions are still on in cases. There's a very big example of a company in NCR which had passed an interim measure on an respondent, okay, of a particular case, right? And actually, if you Google, you'll find the letter which was issued by the internal committee, which that you've been suspended for a period till the interim during the pendency of inquiry. You will be suspended, and you have to return the assets of the organization and all that. And it was very harshly drafted note. So the person went ahead and committed suicide, and it was a big thing about it, and really unfortunate thing to happen. So how as an IC also has to be very sensitive, because
absolutely
at that time the case is still being discussed. We have not convicted the person, we have not given so you have to be extremely sensitive. So the idea of taking an interim measure is to ensure that both the parties are protected, according to me, not only the victim but also the respondent, right?
Absolutely. In fact, confidentiality is also another big obligation, right? That is there not only on the IC, but also the other members. So when you are giving the transfer order, and if you think a lot of company people will be privy to that transfer order, how you word it and how you communicate to him. Do you want to give him one transfer order that will be available to everyone across the board or his superiors, etc., and a separate one, a separate document to him, which only he will have to say, because of this posh complaint, we are transferring you. So these are the basic thing is you're dealing with human beings. Therefore, you have to show empathy at all points.
Very well said, Ankita. Thank you very much for that. And now I invite our panel member, Ranjita, who's been very, very quiet. Ranjita, will you please unmute yourself and...
Hi, Smita.
And you have list of things, and we are running short of time. So you'll have to really help me with many of them. Okay, for you, I have to start with quid pro quo.
Hi. So, hello everyone. So I'll just start off because I think we're running out of time. So, to make it brief, quid pro quo, it actually means this for that. So it's an exchange of any two things. So that's the simple meaning of quid pro quo. So in terms of sexual harassment, when we say quid pro quo, it means it usually involves a perpetrator who is at a higher level of authority and a victim who is subordinate to him. So in such cases, there can be a quid pro quo sexual harassment where the superior will usually offer, it can be either positive or negative. So a superior at a workplace may just make any sexual advances and expect the employee to comply with it, and if she does that, he might give her a promotion or a raise or something. So that will be positive. Where when we talk about a negative situation, he would just say, if you agree to my demands, if you do not agree to my demands, then you might get fired, or her performance review would be bad. So this is how it is in very simple terms. So we have seen most of the cases that we see under the POSH Act are a quid pro quo sexual harassment. So to quote some of the examples, we have your Fanish Murthy at Infosys. He has been charged twice with sexual harassment, one when he was in Infosys and the second time when he was at iGate. So in both cases, he was actually he actually faced a claim of sexual harassment from a subordinate employee. So the first time it happened at Infosys, he actually rejected all the charges. He left the entity, and he actually disagreed to be part of the settlement proceedings as well. But Infosys at the end, at the end of it all, Infosys actually steered clear of it, and he was the one who ended up settling the case. And the second time when it happened at iGate, he was actually it's a bit interesting because at iGate, it was alleged that he one of the facts of the case is that he was in a relationship with that subordinate employee. So while he was in a mutual relationship, even then there was a claim of sexual harassment against him from that subordinate employee. And iGate board also terminated him as CEO, saying that he did not follow the iGate's policy wherein he had a mandatory condition to report any relationships that he had with people in the organization. So primarily, while whether iGate also steered clear of commenting on any of the sexual harassment claims, but considering he didn't follow the policy, the board said because he breached the policy of disclosing this fact, he was basically terminated as a CEO. So now in both cases, he was the superior, and in both cases, he actually threatened the employee to saying that if she didn't agree to his demands, he would just fire her, or he would give a really negative performance review. A similar situation also happened at Uber, where one Miss Sarah Fowler had actually alleged sexual harassment case against one of the senior engineers. So all these cases had been settled. These are all cases where there was a negative aspect towards this quid pro quo sexual harassment, where the superiors threatened the women subordinates, saying that if they didn't agree to the seniors' demands, then they would be fired or they would get a negative performance review. So that's as simple as it can get. And while even students of an institute can also claim all the remedies under this, or the rights under this POSH Act. So there was also another case where, I'll keep it brief. So one of the professors generally, when he graded all these, or when he signed all these dissertation papers of the students, he expected sexual favors from the students. So this was also brought out by one of the students, and it also acts as a clear example of how evidence is dealt with. Just to add on to one of the, I think she is Meenu's points. So yeah, she's still here. Yeah, hi. So to add on to Meenu's points, so in this particular case, that student actually complained immediately after the incident, the very next day. But in her particular complaint, she didn't give full details of the sexual harassment or anything. So this was cited as one of the major defenses by the perpetrator. So he actually claimed that since the first complaint didn't have any of the details, it is actually something the other professors at the institute concocted something against him to basically suppress all his successes and everything. So, but in this particular case, the court took a very lenient view, or they actually took a second complaint filed by her a few days later, where she had clearly explained each and every date of the incident that happened and all the demands that was made by him, with dates along with what was specifically demanded during that day and what was the threat faced by her if she didn't agree to the demands. So this was a case where they actually had a lenient view towards the evidence, and they took the second letter and said, because immediately after the incident, obviously the student is not in a mental state to write a very clear complaint with all the dates and facts, everything clearly mentioned. So this is also just adding on to Minu's point here. So these are few case laws where we have discussed, we can discuss about the quid pro quo sexual harassment. So if I can move ahead to the next one, Smita.
Government.
Yeah, sure.
What does appropriate government mean? Because that's so vague.
Yes.
Law.
Actually, it in POSH Act, I think it is still easier, I would say, because it actually initially it says if it's financed by the central government or state government, the relevant respective government will be the appropriate government. So this takes away all the government establishments. So any other establishments, irrespective of your presence, online, virtual, offline, how many ever branches you have. So depending on all of that, it says whatever any other establishment in any other case, it is going to be the state government which will be the appropriate government. So the duty of the appropriate government under the act is to monitor how this particular act is being implemented and take reports from all these. Basically, there is a level of reporting where the local committee has to report to the government, and the internal committee, the companies also file a report to the local committee. So there is a bit of a reporting hierarchy here. So in the so based on these reports, the relevant government will take action as to what they could still improve in implementation of this act and the remedies that they could give to the victims under this act.
Awesome. Cognizable and non-cognizable. You know, when I heard this word for the first time, I was like, what was that?
So cognizable and non-cognizable, in very simple terms, cognizable offense is a very heinous, severe offense where a police can arrest the accused without a warrant. But when it comes to a non-cognizable offense, there should mandatorily be a warrant before the accused can be arrested. So generally, all the severe or heinous crimes, whatever have been identified under the Indian Penal Code or any other legislation, if so in all those cases, basically, they will be cognizable offenses and the police can arrest the accused without a warrant. But when it comes to POSH Act, we have a situation where the internal committee is actually dealing with the situation, and or if no settlement is arrived, or if the aggrieved woman is not satisfied with or basically the settlement conditions are not satisfied. I'll get to conciliation a bit later. So in certain cases, a complaint has to be filed with the police. So all other cases, it generally is dealt with by the internal committee itself in workplaces. So when it comes to sexual harassment, a cognizable offense, we draw it from the Indian Penal Code. So one of the examples that actually I could give or case laws that I could cite here is the Tehelka case. It's kind of a very famous case because of the name. Tehelka has been a very, very famous magazine. So it has voiced out against all this harassment and gender equality over a lot of years. And suddenly a huge scandal of sexual harassment had arisen within the organization itself. So in this particular case, the cognizable offense is just to I'm just giving an example where police themselves filed a registered an FIR, and they I'll come to Suomoto also here. It's a club, so Tehelka case can be used to explain a lot of terms, but just to give a brief example of it. So this is how we draw from the IPC to understand the cognizable and non-cognizable offenses. And so there, rape, outraging the modesty of a woman. So we have a new amended section 354A, where it talks about sexual harassment by a man. So there again, it's a cognizable offense. So sexual harassment under this act, it is actually sexual harassment in general under IPC will be a cognizable offense. So I think that kind of explains it.
Yeah, so that's why they say that a woman can go to IC as well as go to police station parallelly.
Yes.
So it doesn't stop
Yes.
her doing that parallelly. And as an IC, we should ensure that we help her do that. And there are times when I hear a lot of employers saying, oh my God, but we are doing it at IC, so why is she still going to police station? But that is something that we should not deter her or stop her from doing it. In fact, if she's doing it, let her do that. And if it is a severe offense, there has been times when we ourselves have recommended her to go to police station. Yeah. So this is something that I would want to.
Exactly. Tehelka case is also working with what you just said. They try to suppress and reduce the severity of the crime, and they try to blow it off with some other jargons, words, and everything, while it was actually a heinous crime, a rape. It was a rape. So that is where we are trying to draw the distinction.
So you would want to talk about you would want to talk about Suomoto because you're on the Tehelka case. You were mentioning about Suomoto.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit linked. So Tehelka case again, Suomoto. So under this act, the aggrieved woman has to file a complaint, or the internal committee has to forward a local committee. Actually, it's not internal committee, but a complaint has to be filed with the police for it to be a cognizable offense. Otherwise, the internal committee deals with it, takes internal measures to deal with it, and practically it's generally settled between the perpetrator and the victim. So now to Suomoto, it means on its own motion. So that is the exact translation of the term. So it means on its own motion. So when we say Suomoto, this is a situation where an authority takes an action on its own motion without waiting for someone to come and complain to it about an incident. So that is the translation and the explanation for that particular term. In relation to sexual harassment, we again can cite the Tehelka case, where the internal, so after the act was committed, there was a complaint filed by the aggrieved woman. But what has happened is the internal committee downplayed that whatever allegations that was placed towards it. The internal committee had downplayed all those allegations, and it tried to the relief offered was an apology by the accused, and the other remedy that was offered was he will go on a sabbatical for 6 months. So after committing a rape, this was an extremely simple punishment for after raping a woman. So in this particular case, the media also flared up a lot because it is a very, very famous magazine. So everybody was reporting left and right about the Tehelka case, and after a point, the police Suomoto, on its own motion, filed an FIR against Mr. Tarun Tejpal. He was the accused in that case. So this is one example where.
Ranjita, on your example, there is a question from the team here. They're saying, as per POSH Act, written complaint is mandatory. Can the IC take up a Suomoto basis case? and I don't think so. I don't think so. IC can. Do you have a view? Any of you, Ankita, Meenu, do you have a view on that?
In my understanding, yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ranjita.
Okay, so basically the act is silent on whether IC can take suo motu action. But I mean, I have not come across a situation where IC has on its own motion taken up a case, because IC is an independent committee which is set up in each office. But I mean, without a written complaint for someone to witness a incident of sexual harassment and take up on its own motion, it's a very rare incidence, because any action or any sexual advance by the accused is going to be committed at a safe and secluded place. So for someone to witness this, take it up, and from an inquiry level, basically from the IC level, for them to initiate an inquiry based on something they witnessed is quite rare. So I have not come across it, but the legal position is that there is no restriction on it.
Yeah. So very clearly, what we do, just expand to what Ranjita is saying, is that even if we don't have a written complaint, but we know there's something happening and we don't want the perpetrator to go away, we ensure that the HR gets in and tries to resolve that case, right? Or resolve the issue. So that is what we've been doing. So Ankita, I think we have just crossed the time, and I want to come back to Meenu. Meenu, can you unmute yourself? And there was one important aspect, that adjudication that we left. Meenu, can you hear me? Okay. I think Meenu is not able to hear us. No problem. Any other aspect, Ankita, Ranjita, that you want to bring up here? Before, I know it's like 8:06 and I don't want to take away too much of time. So if you're any closing comment from any of you on these cases that we have discussed, these important aspects that we have discussed, any thing, any input, any takeaways for the group, and if there are any questions in the group they would want to answer. Yeah, Ranjita, you can say anything as a closing comment or something.
Thanks everyone for actually, for patiently listening and for the interesting questions. Actually, what I think what Kelp HR and we actually tried maybe for 1 hour today, but Kelp HR has been trying for a lot to is bring a bit of awareness to about this particular legislation to people who are not in the legal fraternity. So I really appreciate Kelp HR's and ILA's efforts towards this particular goal. And thank you everyone for such a nice, attentive presentation and panel discussion today.
Thank you, Ranjita. Ankita, anything from you as a closing comment?
Sure. So I think this is a very good initiative that has been undertaken, because it's very important. So the law is not only for the lawyers, right? It is for all of us, and things like this unfortunately can happen to anybody. So it's very essential for us to know these terms. But at the end of the day, my advice to everyone would be is to think from the perspective of a normal human being, from a reasonable man. I think that would answer a lot of your queries. And Smita, any of your panel, any of your audiences, if they have any more questions that come to you later on, I think all of us will be happy to get back to them.
So there is one word I can't explain, but what is adjudication? Meenu started with it and it is left there. If Ranjita, you or anybody in the audience also can help us, what does that word mean?
So adjudication, I would simply put it to say that it basically means the process of judging something. Okay, it is the process that you undertake to assess the facts, circumstances, evidence, witness statements, etc., to finally come at a a conclusion. That is adjudication, right? And I think, Smita, the other term that we were talking about, jurisprudence, again, a very big term, but what it basically means is the law surrounding a certain subject matter. It can be either the act itself, sorry, or it can be also in the form of different orders that have been issued, different case laws that have evolved. So all this literature together forms what we call the jurisprudence. So the jurisprudence for sexual harassment would be the act, would be your case laws, would be your parliamentary committee reports, etc.
All right, awesome. There is one question from Swapnil to Ranjita, Ankita, and Meenu, that if women commit sexual harassment, same protection available to man also?
So basically, under Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act, this particular legislation is only for women, but there is a provision under IPC where they can utilize and complain against sexual harassment. The one which I cited, 354A, which has been recently included in the IPC, is actually, it doesn't restrict itself to women. So there you have an avenue.
Thank you
Yes,
so
and
much.
to add on to that, also in the disciplinary policy of your company, I think that is also something, an avenue for you, that, you know, this is misconduct.
Absolutely. And a lot of corporates that I work with are having gender neutral policies under their code of conduct.
Yes.
They follow. So they have same protection, while the law is very women specific, and there are multiple reasons why it is that way. Okay, we'll not get there because that's a separate discussion altogether. Right. So another question from Lena Crasto is, are there any legal rules, etc., recently added to the Act? So any response from all of you, or should I just quickly take a stab at it? So according to me, there are nothing like from that law perspective, but there has been various case laws which keep coming, Veena. If you go back to our KelpHR channel and go to, I think, 2 months back, March month, we had done some 14 case laws. So you can review them because they form as jurisprudence that Ankita spoke to us about, you know, the entire family or the entire set of case laws which makes this law stronger is available there, and that you can definitely view. Anything else anybody wants to add? Ankita, Ranjita, Meenu, from you? Okay, I think...
Nothing, Smita, thank you.
Just a big thank you to ILA and KelpHR for this session.
Thank you so much, Ankita. Thank you, Ranjita. Thank you, Meenu. Thank you for taking out time, all of you at audiences also. This really gives us, you know, it's a cause that is very, very close to KelpHR's heart, and we really want to give back to society, and that's the reason why we put it on Facebook, we put it on YouTube, how much we can pick all our lawyers' brains so that we can understand this better. This law, which is made for the people, by the people, Ankita mentioned that it's not only for lawyers, it is for all of us, right? So that's the idea for us to be able to gather as much knowledge as possible. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'll close the discussion. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Samta. Thank you. Thank you, Sundar. That's nice way for explaining what is adjudication. Thank you, Veena. I'm so glad you're feeling stronger. I'll close the call. Thank you, Vijeta. Gurmeet, can you stop streaming?
Sorry, Smita.
Not allowing me to stop streaming. Can you stop streaming on Facebook?
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you. In African law, there is a scope of SH complaint from male also. Of course, not only African, across any other, I think only, so I was doing a research, Sundar, on understanding US law, UK law. It's a gender neutral law. Only I think India, it is women specific, and I think Middle East or somewhere It's intolerable. They don't have exactly a law per se, but yeah, US, UK, everywhere it is gender neutral. Thank you, Shweta.